Welcome to 1966 of Soviet Space Program. In this episode, Venera 3 will be diving through the clouds of Venus, and we will be sending the first rovers to the lunar surface. The crewed lunar program will be seeing a large ramp in funding this year, which will be important for a required cosmonaut complex upgrade. With the R-56 complex still under construction, it will be at least another year before we can perform flights for this program. Venus surface exploration is 2 years in, with Venera 3 en route with goals to knock out several contracts. Uncrewed lunar exploration has all objectives completed, but this will be kept until the program deadline. As this only takes 2 slots, the only thing we can accept next is advanced commercial applications. To get a sufficient amount of funding from that program, we will aim to accept it at the breakneck pace. Arthur Valentin Cleaver retired from the chief designer position last December, so we now will backfill that spot with Valentin Glushko. His bonus of engine research speeds will come in handy, as we have a lot of engine research queued up to support the crewed lunar initiative. March 19th. Venera 3 wakes up from hibernation as it is nearing its planetary destination. Landing a probe on the Venusian surface will be the primary goal of this spacecraft, but it will be aiming to also complete 2 secondary contracts, as well as a long-term effort of collecting even more science. With a planned orbit capture of 1400 meters per second, Venera 3 was a tad overbuilt, as it is carrying enough propellant for an extra 800 meters per second. Some may call this inefficient, but I say we are simply getting the most out of our Molniya rocket. Capturing into the elliptical orbit, we check off one of the secondary objectives, achieving the goal for the science probe contract. The next task for Venera 3 will be to perform a burn at apoapsis to get the periapsis within the atmosphere of Venus. Projecting a 100-kilometer altitude, the landing capsule is then released from the carrier. The carrier section of Venera 3 then reboosts itself to not enter the atmosphere, as it is much more preferred for this to remain in orbit. This will act as a relay, as the landing capsule is not fitted with an S-band antenna, nor will it have a line-of-sight communication back to Earth. The landing capsule at this point has no attitude control, and relies entirely on the spin stabilization to maintain its orientation. The landing capsule successfully begins to decelerate, as it dives into the Venusian atmosphere in a fiery display. But it seems that 100 kilometers was not quite low enough, and the capsule performs a skip re-entry during its descent. The second pass is enough, though, to get it into a suborbital trajectory. Shortly after, the internal sensors trigger the release of the protective casing, exposing the probe core and the scientific instruments. The transmission of the Flying High science triggers the completion of the atmospheric probe contract, knocking out the second objective of Venera 3. The probe will continue descending through the dense atmosphere for over half an hour, before it finally reaches the surface of Venus. Operating solely on batteries, the probe will wait 9 hours for the relay to swing back around so it can begin transmitting the science back to Earth. After several hours enduring the crushing pressure and intense heat, communications is re-established with the satellite back in orbit, and the data begins streaming back to the Space Center. With the transmission of the readings, the primary contract has now been completed, which also means we can close the Venus exploration program at any time. On the 13th of April, we have a Molniya rocket aimed for the moon. Continuing with the uncrewed lunar exploration program, we are now shooting to achieve the first rover on the lunar surface. The strategy with this mission was to decline and re-roll the contract a few times until an ideal landing location was identified. What's great about this contract is that you can double it up and take the regular lunar landing contract alongside the rover contract. In the event that the rover fails to navigate to the various surface objectives, the mission will not be a total failure, as you will still receive the rewards from one of the two contracts. Completing a lunar injection, mid-course corrections are made, and then some trajectory planning is done in the moon center, moon fixed frame to correctly predict the landing zone. The closer the better, as we don't want to be driving Lunokhod 1 for several hours. As we are performing the braking maneuver, we begin to see that there will be some overshoot from the target zone. But not to worry, as Lunokhod 1 has enough reserves to make a course correction. Lunokhod 1 successfully performs a soft landing, and wastes no time in starting its scientific missions as well as navigating to the first point of interest. It will take several minutes driving on the lunar surface to reach the first point, but thanks to the glass-smooth surface of planets in KSP, there will be no worry of losing mobility from sandy or rocky surfaces. Reaching Site Alpha, the navigational markers update, and Lunokhod 1 begins the second leg of its journey. After driving to Site Bravo, it then continues for the final segment. It takes some time to send the swath of data back to the Space Center, but the contract completion finally kicks in and we have a mission success. The funding from the crewed lunar program has finally picked up momentum, and we are receiving over 1,600 funds daily and climbing. The next order of business is to commence the Cosmonaut Complex upgrade. This facility upgrade is crucial for the race to the moon, as we will not be able to plant a flag and complete the first moon landing contract without it. The construction rate might need some management, but this is not an upgrade you want to start late. Following right behind Lunokhod 1, we have Lunokhod 2 launched on the 16th of June. We are going to rinse and repeat, but this time aim for the far side of the moon. Similar to Lunokhod 1, we can double up on the contracts and take both the rover and far side contract. Declining and refreshing the contract list was needed once again to achieve this, but I would say it is well worth it, as you are almost doubling on the rewards. Targeted landing contracts are not my favorite, but Principia has definitely made it a lot more enjoyable, as you can plot the braking maneuvers and get a pretty good approximation of where you will be landing. The thing to remember with the far side landings is that you won't have direct line of sight for communications. Thankfully though, the lunar relay we sent up in the previous year is still operational, and will serve to provide coverage for the landing and navigational phases of the mission. And just like Lunokhod 1, the braking maneuver was not quite precise enough to hit the designated landing zone, so Lunokhod 2 will use the terminal descent engines to bring it closer. These rover contracts are going to be a good practice, as the later crewed missions will also require targeted landings to be achieved. A second successful rover landing in the books. Lunokhod 2 will traverse the surface exploring the 3 defined points of interest, collecting scientific data and video imaging along the way. This will also be the last uncrewed lunar mission, as the program is nearing its deadline. But that is not a concern for the space agency, as we are gearing up our cosmonauts to land on the lunar surface. We now head into the admin building to close out the uncrewed lunar surface program. And in its place, accept advanced commercial applications at breakneck. Something to note is that the lunar rover contracts have put us in a very good spot with confidence. The next programs we take should have no problem with accepting at faster paces. Not wasting any time, we kick off the Advanced Commercial Applications program with the launch of a geosynchronous test satellite. Thanks to recently completed research, the Cosmos 2 received a few upgrades, which are needed to succeed in these missions. The second stage has been upgraded to the RD-0110, and the third stage is changed to the 11D-33. The geosynchronous contract is an optional one in this program, but given the relative ease, it was worth taking for that extra confidence. To achieve the mission requirements, we simply need to burn into a near-circular orbit with any inclination, having a period just under 24 hours. This will be performed with two maneuvers. First, to get an altitude near 35.8 thousand kilometers, and then a burn at apogee to create a period of 23 hours and 56 minutes. Multi-layer insulation comes to the rescue again, as we can relight the 11D-33 and still have sufficient fuel without boiling off. The geosync orbit gives a pretty interesting pattern, moving in a figure 8 as it goes north and south over a relatively fixed longitude. While another Cosmos 2 is getting built, there's plenty of funding accumulating to scale up on researchers. We first set the target to 2,600 and pass a bit of time. With that completed, improved landing engines will now finish almost an entire month sooner. This is helpful, but it is still worthwhile to continue hiring more researchers. So we initiate another auto-hire, setting the value to 2,750. In mid-October, a geostationary test satellite takes flight from Baikonur. Another round of upgrades have once again taken place. Improving performance, the fairings have now been upgraded to utilize fiberglass for reduced weight. Additionally, the third stage was stretched for an extra 3 seconds of burn on the 11D-33, as well as increasing multi-layer insulation from 1 to 5. This mission is also the first use of the recently unlocked Tech Level 3 solar panels, which now introduces the capability to track the sun. Unfortunately for us, an ignition failure is experienced when the engine tries to relight in orbit, meaning a mission failure. The 10th of December is a redemption flight for the geostationary contract. And just like the mission before, it successfully reaches orbit. With the first part down, we now set a maneuver so we can end up with a 35.8 megameter apogee at the ascending node. A successful relight this time, and Geosat 3 executes the 2,500 meter per second maneuver. For the next part, we will need to enter in a near zero inclination orbit and increase the period to 24 hours. Given that we are launching from a high latitude site, we will have to spend a bit more energy to reduce the inclination to 0 degrees. Requiring over 2,300 meters per second of delta V, the final maneuver will expend the remainder of the upper stage, as well as a majority of the propellant from within the satellite. The maneuver was not quite precise enough, as we forgot to plot in the inertially fixed frame, causing the eccentricity and period to be off target. There is thankfully enough propellant left in the satellite, so a 45 meter per second correction is executed, reaching the required geostationary parameters. Completing this contract, we receive 50 free applicants, which all get onboarded as researchers to get us to a total of 2770. Program funding has also increased even more at this point, so our last task of the year is to increase the construction rate for the cosmonaut complex. Thanks for watching, and see you in 1967 when we commence the crewed lunar program.